Alex here with a Perspectives video on high conflict child custody. Donna Wilburn, a licensed marriage and family therapist with Red Rock Counseling, is going to be interviewing family law specialist Mandy McKellar, who is running for Department M of the 8th Judicial District Court. Let's take a look.
All right, so I'm Donna Wilburn, licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm here to talk to Mandy McKellar, get to know your judge candidates for family court better, and we're going to discuss some topics. So first, I'd like you to maybe introduce yourself, what department you're running for, what position, and I know all this judging talk.
Well, first off, thank you very much for having me here today. My name is Mandy McKellar. I am running for Family Court Department M. That's M for McKellar.
Oh, okay.
That's going to be my tagline. I've been practicing family law for about 13 years. I've done exclusively family law. My experience and background, I started out with two very well-known family law attorneys. I worked for them for about 4 or 5 years, each of them. Went from one to the other, and then I decided to open my own practice in 2011.
So did you go right into family law, like right from the get-go?
Yeah.
So I heard it was the scariest one and people don't want to do it.
It's not that scary. You gotta like to work with families, and you gotta be able to understand conflict. And my background was in psychology and criminal justice for my bachelor's degree. So it kind of fit in the niche of it. So, and
you're not
the
scared?
family law community. No.
That's good at drama.
No, the family law community, the judges and attorneys and everybody, they were always like very inviting to me, and it just was like something that always fit, and I liked the work, and even though people say it's hard to like the work, but. And then a couple of years ago, I kind of didn't get burnt out, but I wanted to do something a little bit more involved with family law and look at it on a different side. And I picked up a track with the county doing juvenile delinquency.
Okay.
So I've been doing juvenile delinquency now through conflict track for 2 years, almost 2 years now.
Does that incorporate their family members and stuff?
Yeah, it's criminal. So whenever a child under the age of 18 gets arrested for a crime, they go through juvenile delinquency, and there's various aspects that I work with, certifications. Sometimes they're like right there in the crime, and we're going to certify them as an adult, so I deal with certifications, all aspects of trial, so it's family oriented, because you do have to work with the families, and the idea is reform as opposed to punishment.
Okay.
But we try to work with them best we can. It's a lot of it's
So to look at this experience that you have in that track and seeing, I probably a lot of dysfunctional families, how does that influence you becoming a judge with that? How would that impact you on the bench?
Well, I have experience with a lot of it. So I've seen just amount of dysfunction in family court and just criminal court. I think it impacts me as I have an understanding. I've been catering to this understanding for years now, and about all kind of diverse backgrounds and work and what everybody kind of you have to understand people. I think you have to understand people mostly to do this job.
Yeah.
And that's why I feel like I'm the one for the job.
Yeah.
I came from a very small town in Wyoming, and I moved to Vegas, so I understand a lot of niches
different
of
cultures.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, a lot.
Wow.
So
going on the bench, and I'm kind of representing the mental health community. I reached out and let folks give me ideas for questions and things like that. So focusing on the mental health aspect, and I'm thinking with the juvenile court that you've had to incorporate the opinions of mental health providers or treatment or things like that, which I didn't know, and I think that's a good sign to me that maybe you're open to that. So going into the family court on the bench in family court, how would you incorporate mental health providers and their services in what you're doing with families?
And it's an unfortunate thing that it's an extremely underdeveloped area in family court, and mental health is it's starting to become like at the forefront of a lot of things.
It's getting cool.
It's just getting there now. We've always had, you send people in for custody evaluations,
right.
but things that judges or the bench and the law, there's not a clear line with the mental health providers and what you can actually order.
Right.
And I think just us having the discussion is a good way to move it to the forefront, because
Right.
when you're dealing with pathogenic parenting or PTSD or all of these different illnesses that people have that could utilize mental health services and treatment, how do you as a judge order it as opposed to, and it's so complicated too, because we're even in a position in family court as attorneys where if a judge orders mental health, then it affects the insurance that's going to cover what the parties and the kids and everybody needs. So it's like we almost kind of have to have backdoor conversation, like don't put it in the order, but this is what our understanding is, but then there's no way to force anybody. So it's one of those things that needs further discussion. It's one of those things that does need to be put to the forefront of family court, and as a candidate and as a judge, that would be one of the things I would want to start on right away.
Is incorporating mental health or the providers or how to work together?
Absolutely needs to be. I mean, we need to start having discussions about all of it.
Telling me. I understand it. So that's good to hear that you're even like considering looking at that area. So I don't know if you might know that I work with the high conflict divorce crowd.
Yes.
And the more dramatic, the better. That seems to go my way. Regarding being an attorney and a judge, like as an attorney, I'm sure you see that, but if you're going on the bench as a judge, what kind of training, understanding, education do you have or that you can bring regarding high conflict divorce cases?
Okay, so and this goes back to my history of background. I mean, I initially started in high conflict divorce cases because I worked for, I'll name drop, Marshall Willick. Okay. And Marshall Willick had an extreme amount of high conflict divorce cases. So that's where I just started. And then, I've had my own cases in my own practice that have been high conflict. They're not all high. I like it when they're not.
I call those unicorns.
Yeah. But there's still some. There's always a few bad apples. Being an attorney, I'm separating from being a judge. I mean, my understanding as an attorney is, when you have to give up and just go to trial and have the judge hear it. When you can try to come to agreements, I always try to get people to come to agreements. High conflict cases, you just can't do that sometimes. So that's kind of where my experience in practice would, translate.
Have you gotten any specific classes or training or anything in like psychological personality disorders or high conflict dynamics or,
I got a certificate. I have so many certificates. I have one in parental coordination.
Okay.
And I did act as a parenting coordinator on the law side. We were doing that for a while. It hasn't been happening so much lately, which isn't good because I think they're sometimes more necessary than attorneys.
Yeah, I called it, now I call it parenting coach. I'm like, I'm not gonna call it that.
Or divorce coach or
I'm gonna coach.
Yeah,
not just legal stuff.
Probably, yeah. So I have a certificate in parental coordination, and I had another certificate in child interviews.
Okay.
To conduct them. And I didn't even use them to the point of like taking them. I just used it in my everyday practice when you had to interview children, because some of the judges, they're not up there anymore, but some of them made you, interrogate them on the stand kind of a thing. And I always wanted to just know more about it, knowledge about it. So that's where my background would be with that aspect of it.
So in high conflict divorce type cases, there's other factors and dynamics that are affecting the person's ability to negotiate.
Yeah.
So how do you know if you're working with things like that, and what would you do if you see this high conflict situation happening and resolution is not happening? How would you as a judge handle that kind of case in front of you?
Well, as a judge, if it was a high conflict case, there was only so many things you can do to attempt to get the parties to come to a sort of settlement. And as far as what you can order as a judge, honestly, it would come to me to a point where you just do have to have a trial or evidentiary hearing and make a ruling based on the best interest of the children, or however it is, on what the evidence has and what the evidence says, what the appropriately put in evidence.
And that like segues to another, that I'm not an attorney or a judge, but I see this happening a lot, is where just someone saying something is counted as evidence. Just because they said, I saw this person do this, it for some reason is like counted as if it's true.
Yeah, hearsay evidence can be very damning in family court, especially now with the days of, you know, Instagram and social media and fake news and hashtag. You know, you have to, I think at the beginning of a case, there's always like a motion for temporary orders, especially in high conflict cases. And some of those things that come in, you can take as like an offer of proof to make your initial decision prior to, you know, the final decision for temporary orders. Evidence needs to be put in appropriately. You know, it needs to be authenticated. These are the rules of evidence. This is what we all learned in law school.
So do you kind of take that seriously, even in family court?
Yes, I take it very seriously in family court. And you know, and being a good attorney, knowing what evidence is important and what is not is very, very indicative of how your case is going to go as well. This is me with more my attorney hat on, but you know, people in high conflict cases tend to bring you every single piece of paper.
Like, here it is. Recordings, text messages.
Yeah, listen to this. This is what he said last Wednesday. And, you know, you have to know how to control that. And some attorneys don't. You know, and when they bring me stuff like that, that's just useless. You know, I'll be like, no, what is this gonna do? You know,
Right.
So
you
having
can't really use it.
Right, realistic conversations about what you can really use and what you can't.
Yeah.
So that's the way I look at it. But yes, everything has to be entered into evidence.
And that's over here that I'm just the layman out there, and I'm a parent, grandparent, and I see all these people, and hearing that you really want to give evidence weight versus just somebody yelling and screaming. More weight than that.
Right. Well, yelling and screaming people usually have just so much power in any situation, don't they?
No, but some people they do, I have to tell you.
No,
Yeah. How are you? So how are you? And so this is what I've seen is some people don't get swayed. They're like, yelling and screaming does nothing. I'm sticking with the facts and the evidence and things like that. And then some people get nervous and they get flustered, and then they start to try to please somebody and tone them down and not make them so upset.
Oh yeah.
So how would you cope with that, and like where did you learn how to cope with that?
You know, that's a good question.
The drama.
You know, and it's funny because my significant other, he laughs at me all the time because he's like, I can never tell like what you're, because you're always here, you know. So I'm a very logical, even keel person. Have I always been like this? Probably. Yeah. You know, I don't get uproared about anything except unless it's something that's, you know, exciting or, you know, things that make you happy. But like, you know, with the I don't know, maybe there's like a switch in my brain, I just turn it off and I'm just like, okay, are you
so
done?
you don't let it doesn't affect you very much.
No
matter how upset they're getting.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, no.
You can just keep logical even
like
when they're upset.
you know, I think it's maybe too through your training as a divorce attorney, because it's like, I'm only looking for this. It's like, you're giving me all of this, but I just need these like 5 things right here. You know,
so you can filter through all the drama.
Okay, this is what we need. Yeah.
For what's important in there.
Because like, especially with high conflict cases, like for every one issue that you actually need information on, they give you 50. So it's
That's
basically being
a good way
able
of putting
to,
it.
train your brain into like compartmentalizing what you need in each box.
What's actually relevant to whatever you're looking at.
Right, which is also very important for judges. I mean, I have seen judges in the past like take on things that shouldn't really, like, why is that relevant? You know, they're all pretty good, you know, but relevancy is a big thing with it, you know, but
So something that I've seen is sometimes a judge may enter or start talking about their opinion about what's best psychologically for a kid, or what the kid's feeling, or what the kid needs to be healthier, when they haven't really had the training in that. And so as you're looking towards the bench, you're the legal professional, you have some mental health point of view and experience with that field. How would you incorporate a mental health provider? How would you know when to bring them in?
Well, I think every single case is different, and so it would depend on each specific case and what you're actually looking at, because I think there's different levels of mental health as well. So it's not just all go here to this mental health person. I would never ever make the decision that somebody is in need of that without knowing from a professional like yourself that it is actually needed, because even though I have a limited amount of knowledge of psychology background and I've been doing this I would want to know from somebody who is in the industry that it is appropriate. So I guess that's kind of the lawyer way to answer that. It depends. So
They're not answering.
but that's how I'm going to answer that. It depends.
I think that's probably the best answer.
Yeah,
That's probably the best answer.
it depends.
So a hot topic out there, and I hear this from parents a lot, and I don't know what you think about it. It seems like a myth to me, is when a child is 14 or 13, they can choose where to live, and they can make their own decision about how to do that. And I haven't seen that, Kay. What actually comes across my path is no, they can't. But that still seems to be out there. Attorneys seem to think that. So I'm curious where you're at with that.
I don't know what attorneys thought that, but
It's like recent.
the law, but the law is very clear on it, and they might have just changed it recently with the new statutory changes. But it was always a child of suitable age and discretion. And what does that mean? Well, there are very, very intelligent 9-year-olds and there are very dumb 17-year-olds. For example, I've had both spectrums. I had a 9-year-old who was dying of cancer. He was being interviewed. He wanted to spend the last days that he had with both parents. Now, that is a child of suitable age and discretion. I mean, he's near death.
And that's a realistic
right.
desire.
And then the other side of the spectrum, I had a 17-year-old who wanted to live with dad so she could do drugs with dad. And it came out in the middle of a hearing.
Not allowed.
So that is a very dumb 17-year-old that was not allowed to pick to go live with dad. So that's, and sometimes when I'm talking with clients, because that's one of the biggest questions you always get, like, when can they pick? And it's like, it also depends. But it's each specific child and that specific circumstance. Do I think that there's a magical age? No, I don't. I think it does depend on every child in that circumstance. And there's a lot of things you gotta look at too, like is there pathogenic parenting going on? Is there, a child who's being alienated is not gonna want to so it's...
Right. At least you're willing to look.
Yeah.
And not just go, oh no, they're 14, they can decide.
No, you gotta look into that.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's just my experience with casework that I've had,
Yeah. So here's something too, it's a question, I don't know if you had any of these cases where a teen or a child is refusing to follow the custody order. Mm-hmm. And you've already assessed if there's a valid reason, there's no like abuse or anything going on, they're just refusing. Mm-hmm. How do you handle that? I think there's a dilemma or different opinions regarding enforcing custody orders. For kids have to follow custody orders, but if they don't want to, how do you enforce that?
That's a case by case kind of basis too, but in that specific circumstance that you're talking about, I think a heavy therapeutic involvement would need to be in there. Mm-hmm. Because you already have a child who is refusing to do something for their own reasons, and what are the reasons why, and if it takes extra time by coming to a provider like you and having everybody sit down and kind of figuring what's going on, then that's what it takes. And the reason I have that opinion is because I have so many kids in juvenile delinquency who have no parents. Nobody. They're getting called in for a plea hearing where they were missing for so much time, and you go out and you call for the parent and nobody's there.
Right.
And it's just, they're making their own choices at that point, but not really. I mean, it's the parents' responsibility.
So is there anything, because I thought you couldn't have a consequence for a minor in the, like you couldn't say, you're in trouble for not going. I thought the judge couldn't say. But is there some kind of consequence for the parent who's not following, they're in their care and the child's not following the
Honestly,
order?
that would just require an evidentiary hearing to determine what is in the best interest of the child, and if the evidence does state that that child is being alienated so to a point where they're a teenager, they don't want to go to the other parent's house, then that would be a point in time where you'd want to look at custody.
So, and even so, from my understanding, even if you do say, yes, that's in the best interest, yes, that child's being alienated, yes, they need to go, there's no way to enforce it and make them go.
Well, the only thing that you can do is file into family court at this current moment. Should there be more programs or something available when that happens to kids? Yeah, there should be. Do I think it should be a juvenile delinquency kit? No. Don't misconstrue what I said. It's just, but there should be some programs. I mean, we always need further programs for juveniles, period. But in that circumstance, there should be something more than what we're doing.
Is that something you're interested in looking at?
Absolutely. There's a lot of things that I'm interested in looking at. I started my whole career, not necessarily in family law, but I worked for Judge Osterly as her law clerk, and she was heavily involved in all kinds of programs. I mean, and I don't know what goes on down there in the back, you know, with the judges, but that would be my goal as a judge, is to start looking at, you know, more inventive ways on how we can get enforcements of orders and how we can get quicker orders.
So it sounds like you have like goals to improve the system.
Absolutely. It needs it. It needs it.
I've learned that. So let's say as a mental health provider and you're considering who to use or what to use them for. So speaking on behalf of all the providers out there, how would you know whether it be education or training or how to choose somebody, or what kind of education would you want them to have that would make them a good candidate to be on a team with the court system?
It depends on whatever kind of issue you're dealing with. I mean, there's specific ones. I mean, there's anger ones, there's pathogenic parenting ones, you know, there's ones that deal with drug and alcohol, you know, it just, again, we're going to answer like a lawyer. It depends on the facts and circumstance.
We're just taking your answer. It depends.
Yeah, but obviously, you know, you got to look at their CV, and we used to get I still have one, but it's a list of everybody, every provider in town that, you know, does certain things. And even as an attorney, when I'm looking at utilizing mental health, I'll look at that list and see what I got, you know, who's got more experience and things, but experience dictates, you know, kind of how you should go about it.
And that's something that, you know, not a lot of people realize. You can have a new PhD or an experienced master's level person, depending on the topic. It's not how much school or how much experience. It's, you know, you have to look at different factors and all like that.
Right. Same thing for attorneys.
Yeah.
You know, you have fairly seasoned attorneys, and then you have ones that are just beginning.
Right.
And, you know, everybody's got to start somewhere. But
Right.
the high conflict cases, I mean, it's really hard to deal with that as an experienced attorney. I was lucky when I got to deal with those. I had a very experienced attorneys around me to train me into how to do
That
it.
you can consult with and talk to.
Yeah. Marshall, what do I
He's
do?
been involved in this, so you're right. You do have one who knows about the subject. That's for sure.
Yeah, and Bob Dickerson, he was my other mentor.
So as, you know, we kind of close up, if someone wants to learn more about you or get to know, you know, some of your history or your points of view or contact you, how would they do that? What's your contact info?
Oh, okay. So I run McKellar Law Office. It's www.mckellarlawoffice.com. And also I'm running for Judge, Department M. I have website. It's www.mckellarforjudge.com. Also, I'm on the social interwebs, the Instagrams and the Facebooks, and
Social media
anytime.
personality.
Yes, yes. And anytime somebody emails me anything, I'm like, okay, I put them in the right direction. So.
Okay, so even if they're asking for help or
Yeah, they can email me. My email is Mandy@McKellarFamilyLaw.com, but a lot of people actually do the social media thing now. I get a lot of emails a day, like, help me with this problem.
I bet. I can understand it.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you for coming in. It was
Yes,
really
thank you.
good. A
It's
lot
been
of folks
great.
were kind of scared to talk to me, so I appreciate your time.
People were
I
scared.
know. I don't know what they think I'm going to be making them cry or something.
Oh my
But
gosh.
I'm nice.
No, yeah.
So you took the
It's
time,
great.
and we're gonna put this out there, and when we get it ready, we'll give you a link, and you can pass it around to all your friends.
Sounds good.
So thanks so much.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.